Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast, where aspiring entrepreneurs learn what it takes to find, buy, and build successful franchise businesses. My name is Dru Carpenito, and I'm your host as we dive into these fascinating behind-the-scenes stories of people who have used surprising franchises to create massive success. I'm glad you're here. Let's dig in. Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast. I am excited to have my longtime buddy from franchising, who've got to know each other very personally over the years, Steve Hitzemann, who is a multi-unit franchisee with StretchLab. And Steve was very early on in StretchLab, which has since gone on to grow to a very, very large franchise organization. So look forward to talking about a lot of different things with this. But Steve, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate you inviting me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this one. I think there's a lot of interesting topics that we can cover with your journey in franchising and some of the cool things that you're doing. But to kick things off, my friend, man, would love to share a little bit of your story and hear a little bit of your story with the audience. Kind of maybe what you were doing before you got into franchising and StretchLab. Kind of maybe what inspired you to get into it, and kind of what you're up to now.
Cool. Happy to. So let's see, before StretchLab, and actually still, but, before, I've been working pretty much corporate America since I got out of school. So that's now for me coming on 25 years, sort of a career, all here. I'm based in Charlotte, all here, made my way into the finance industry as a lot of folks do, based here in Charlotte. So I, been doing that and enjoying it, learned a lot from, different leaders along the way, and peers, frankly, and folks that I've worked with and worked for. And, but always been at, they always haven't been huge, massive, companies. But right now I work for a big bank and, enjoyed it. Right. But really just, thought through the years, okay, so is this a forever thing for myself? And really my wife is a part of the equation as well, in terms of, the lifestyle that we wanted to live, what she was doing. She's a nutritionist by trade, but she hasn't worked, or she had not worked since, our first child was born, which was now 16 years ago. So, we were, talking through, okay, what does the future look like for us from a work perspective? Does she want to go back and be practicing nutritionist? So those conversations were in process with no set timelines or deadlines where we had given ourselves, when we came across StretchLab, and that really came out of both just uncovering it, reading the paper one day. Kind of the front page of the journal, there was an article about assisted stretching studios. But prior to that, she and I had, kind of myself specifically, then I kind of brought her into the mix, had gotten onto kind of our own personal stretch routine as we've gotten older, realized how important it was to stay active. And we have historically been active folks and want to continue to be that way into our, into the golden years, but realized that we had to do more maintenance than we'd been doing. So, a few chiropractor visits and things like that, decided and uncovered that stretching was going to be a key for us to be able to keep doing what we're doing. So for about 2 years, we were doing a lot of stretching at home, kind of doing some.
Didn't something happen? Like, didn't you hurt injure your back doing some pretty severe
literally
physical
bending
activity
over, to pick up, literally folding laundry one morning or one evening, I think, watching TV, and friggin' back just goes out on me. So spent Christmas morning laying on the floor, in massive pain. And so, that truly was the genesis of, okay, something, and, it was as simple as that, right? It wasn't like a car wreck or I fell off my bike. It was living life, right?
Yeah.
So that got us going. And, so we see this article in the journal, like, oh, that's sweet. Like I would love to be a customer of that business. Do we have any of those around here? I had done some deep stretching classes at yoga studios in town, which I liked, really loved them. But it wasn't one-on-one. And what I read about assisted stretching was, well, that's the jam. That's what we need. And so, that thought process quickly evolved from, I'd like to be a customer, to, hey, maybe here's a business opportunity for us. And so that really got us starting to do the research across all of the, at that point in time, this is early 2018. It was StretchLab, Stretch Zone. You had some other mom and pops, right, in different sort of big cities, right? But it was an LA, New York thing. I think Chicago had some studios there. So definitely not, and not outside of those big metropolitan cities quite yet. So that got us going, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but introduction to you and in conversation to kind of validate my thoughts, and trip out to Orange County to kick the tires on it, because that was the only place to see at least a StretchLab was in LA. So yeah, that's how it kind of played through.
Yeah, it's funny. And then 4 years later, here we are.
4 years later, just opened my fourth studio a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Nice. That's the one in Fort Mill.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So you kind of had an experience, a personal experience that kind of opened your eyes to the opportunity as, a customer, or potential customer, because you couldn't even be a customer because there wasn't a studio here. But, and then coupled with, it sounds like you and Stacey were going through just some iterations of kind of what the next, what's the next chapter, or, whatever the long-term plans were going to be for the fam and stuff. And, the worlds collided, and here we are. Yeah. The opportunity. That's cool, man. Sure. Yeah. It's a journey, right? Like it's always a journey. You can't script it, like no matter what it is.
You can't script it, but things happen along the way that to me become pretty clear signs about, the path to take and what's right or wrong. So for example, I remember it vividly, and I know you've written at least once about this. So I started talking with close friends, right? Like, hey, I'm thinking about this idea. We've uncovered this. Nobody had any experience with franchising. And our mutual friend, he was like, oh, you need to chat with this guy, Dru. He's from Virginia, he's a tech kid. And so we had some similarities there. And so I remember you and I spoke, it was a 4th of July week. I think it was 4th of July of 2018. It must've been. And I remember vividly spending probably 10 minutes describing StretchLab to you, right? And you kind of you were sort of quiet and you listened, right? And then when I was done, you basically shared that you knew all of what I had told you and then some, because you'd been at a recent conference and you knew a lot more about the business than I did. And you validated my everything that I had, all my research and what I was thinking, right? I remember I hung up that phone and I was like, wow, that was a sign that this becomes a good idea, right? Because you and I had some, from our personal experience and life experiences that we have, right? Even those things that really are irrelevant to starting a business, right? Those pieces there, for me, validated, okay, this he knows what he's talking about. He's got similar information that I have, right? Some of the questions that I had, you're able to answer, right? And so that conversation that you and I had was a big part of us deciding to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, it's funny because that was early. I mean, that was 2018.
Yeah.
And I think like the concept was very new, like this idea of assisted stretching. And there's a lot of franchises that are out there with similar kind of early stage ideas and concepts. So you could, but a lot of the validation was kind of what's behind the scenes a lot of the times, right? Like with the exponential factor, which, for anybody listening that doesn't know who Exponential Fitness is, they're the parent company to StretchLab that has since gone on to become a publicly traded company. Because StretchLab was like one of their first few brands, I think.
Yeah, it was probably maybe 4th or 5th in the portfolio. Don't exactly. When I was doing the research, right, which is, always, from a potential franchisee perspective, it's go out and talk to other franchisees, right? And I think, you can get names of lists of folks in the back of the FDD. I'm sure you know exactly where that is within those docs. But, for me, I was speaking to Club Pilates franchisees, right? Because it still is essentially, I mean, it's the Expo playbook now, but it was the Club Pilates playbook, right? That you were buying, right? But instead of, a Pilates studio, you're putting a StretchLab studio, right? But the sales processes, the marketing, right? All of that pretty much is the same, right? And that's I think the beauty of franchising in a lot of ways. Definitely how Exponential has become so successful. But yeah, I mean, I was out there, talking to Pilates franchisees because it was early. I mean, the only Stretch Labs were ones that corporate purchased from the folks that started with the idea. So I couldn't speak to them, I think, for some legal reasons. So it was okay. Here are other folks. Talk to them, but then I had to in the end it was you got to trust your gut a little bit, but do a lot of research and line the chips up as best you can, right, based on the info that you have to make that decision. But yeah, so it was early on, and here, at least in the Southeast where I am, I was not. I had to go out west, right, to see to kind of really see this in action.
What number franchisee were you?
I asked that the other day. I don't know if I was one of the first 10. It's definitely within the first 20.
Yeah.
In terms of our studios actually opening, we got them opened. We might be in the top 10, like the first 10 there.
Yeah.
Could be off on that, but we were, we were early on. Definitely the first out here. So my colleagues down in Jacksonville, they beat me in terms of opening when it comes to actual studio doors. So they would say, well, we had some folks up in Jersey too. So you had Jersey, Florida, and then Charlotte in terms of at least East Coast.
And now you do some regional training, right? As StretchLab has grown, which is 3-4 years later. Mm-hmm. I think I had dinner with Lou, and he mentioned that over 500 studios signed and in development, maybe like over 100 open.
Yeah, they had a huge 2021 in terms of signings. And we were looking at sales results the other day. I mean, there's, I want to say, 250 close to 250 studios that are out there reporting sales, right? If either they're open or they're in a pre-sale status, right? Wow. Which is a great thing about our model from that pre-sale point of view. We can get into it, but yeah, it has grown exponentially.
Yeah, no pun intended, or pun intended. There we go. The expo factor. Cool. So what type of as the company has grown, it's West Coast based headquarters. You were kind of early on the East Coast. So now you have become a regional training center. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, exactly. So we've got one of our employees, we knew early on that there was the potential they were going to have basically trainers, instructors throughout the country, right? To kind of support the footprint as it grew. When we started, everybody that I trained I had to send to California. Right. So it was just, my training costs were through the roof right out of the gates. It was a known issue. It wasn't anything that I was surprised by, but had to send everybody to Cali to get trained, but with the intent of finding individuals, as they got enough experience and they proved themselves to become local/regional trainers. Right. And so we were fortunate enough to identify one of our employees that wanted to do that. And he had the chops to do it. And so, he's been we've got there, he has some peers now in Florida and some folks coming just a little bit north of us. But people have been coming to us to train in Charlotte for quite on, 2+ years now, which is great, and awesome. From that perspective, everybody that I hire and train, I can keep them here at home, right? I don't have to send them, cross country.
Yeah, because it's proprietary techniques in training. Mm-hmm. But can you maybe talk a little about how you picked employees, what you look for in their backgrounds, and then maybe what training they go through to become a certified flexologist? I'm assuming they're certified. By StretchLab.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of finding folks, we we could, there are some very objective items that folks have to have, that candidates have to have in terms of specific, and it's not, you don't have to have all of them, but you have to have, one or a couple of a few things. So it's, it's a relative degree, 4-year degree. It's a certificate, one of a few different certifications within, kind of like the personal training or yoga instruction, right? Which has got a 200 or a 500 hour certs and things like that. So it's accredited certs, right? Within kind of body work or fitness, a degree, and then experience, then relevant experience, for us to even talk to somebody and consider them, right? So those are the more objective pieces. Then from there, if somebody has had hands-on experience with the client, then that's important. If they've had hands-on experience with a client or in a previous job and they liked it, right? That's good, right? Because some people, they want to work with individuals, but literally, as a massage therapist does, hands-on, right? That's different from a lot of boutique fitness. So if they have that experience, that's great. Their personality is important. Our business is, we only offer one-on-one stretching, and you're in the person's, personal space, right? And so if somebody if I don't enjoy having a conversation with an individual, then they're not going to be a good hire, right? Because if they've got to be able to relate, they've got to be able to listen well, right? So when we're interviewing, are they listening to my questions and kind of taking it past just the first layer, right? And going a little bit deeper? That tells me they're listening and thinking. And we need folks to be able to do that, because it's important for us to tie our services back to what we call the why, right? Why is somebody into StretchLab, right? And so a lot of times you got to dig for that. You got to peel back a few layers of the onion to truly find that with a client. And because they won't necessarily come right out with it, right? So I need folks that can relate, that can have the ability to start to ask those questions, and then when they hear the answers, take it down to that level. So, that's really important for us. Let's see, in terms of, from there, from a training perspective, we have online modules that folks have to complete in a test prior to showing up to training. Then they have two full days of hands-on training, which basically puts all of that online work into practice, right? That is then instructor led. So all the online is individual on their own time. Then they show up to training as a candidate, put all that to work, pass another test, and make sure that they've got all that down. Wow. And then 20 hours of practice before they're certified as a flexologist, right? And so then that 20 hours of practice really is, work is practicing with our team. So I'm getting stretches, my wife's getting stretches, all of our managers are getting stretches, depending on the studio they're going to work at. We offer that up to all of our teammates, right? Because for them, it's a free stretch, and they're really good at giving feedback. So, while I think I give decent feedback, right? I'm not a flexologist, right? And so I don't know all the ins and outs of what they learned at FTP and how to put that into practice. My other flexologists, 100% do, right? And so I look to them to give that coaching and feedback back to those folks so that they can, ramp up very quickly. And, when they're actually seeing a paying client for the first time, they're delivering a better just than good stretch, right? They're giving great experience right out the gates.
I think that first stretch is so important because it's so surprising, like how it like a good stretch, how it truly activates and invigorates the body in a way that, whenever I go, it's a good 2 to 3 days of just like this new type of energy you have flowing through your body that just feels like
the endorphins get going. You feel good, right? And then it snowballs, right? You're standing taller. You're more confident if it's going out there to play golf or play tennis, or just you're walking with better posture on the block. And so it definitely, that first experience is key. Because when we do it well, that, it sells our services for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. It's super unique. So you've scaled up to 4 studios, and it sounds like mean, it's no easy feat to get somebody up to a certified flexologist. It sounds like, based on what you just laid out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like any tips or secrets that you've kind of figured out to, not just in the StretchLab, just kind of maybe in business in general, in terms of like recruiting and hiring?
Well, I was chatting with one of our managers, or my area manager this morning, because we've got a training coming up in a few weeks, and okay, how many folks we want to have hired, and we've identified somebody, and I was like, okay, if you've got somebody, lock them in, right? Make that offer now. We've learned, if we sit, especially in this job market, right, coming through COVID and everything there, if we kind of wait around and, well, maybe there's somebody better, right? That never plays out, right? If we've got somebody that's good, now we want to make sure we don't want to just, if we're not sure about them, I don't want to make the offer. But if we feel good about somebody, then I want the offer out there ASAP so that we can get them on the team, have them come into our studio. They've already done that through the interview process anyway. But get them going into that online piece so that they can really start to take it in. And so that to me is key. If we know we've got somebody, let's lock them in, let's get them hired, let's get them to sign, right? They're going to join us. Because then they're, hopefully they're not out there looking for another job, right? Because when we've waited, or we know when folks give us sort of the half in, half out answer, it never plays, right? They're always out looking for the next best thing.
So what does your hiring process look like? You mentioned that you have an area manager. Does a candidate go straight to you as the owner?
Screens at first. So, we use people are applying through job boards online. We're reviewing those. Our managers are reviewing those. Then we've got phone screens. What would be one phone screen? If we like them, we'll bring them in for a first interview. Sometimes we'll hire off that first in person, or it'll take a second in person, maybe with myself or Stacey, or we have lead flexologists in all of our studios as well, who they're kind of they oversee really quality of our stretching within each studio. We'll bring them into the interview process as well, so that they're bought in with somebody that's going to join kind of their team, right? To make sure, okay, they've got the chops for and are they going to fit culturally, right? With the team that we've got in there. So that's what that looks like. And I'm doing that. We're kind of always doing that. There's always a training on the horizon. So, I mean, that's a nice thing for us now, that I don't have to worry about, okay, if I find somebody good today, it's going to be 3 months before I can get them trained. Even if I don't have something locally, if they're worth it, it's worth my dollar to send them to a training again, so I can get them onboarded as quickly as possible and don't lose them to, competition, or, either that's direct competition or just to another job, right? Be it in boutique fitness or something else.
So do you interview every candidate, or do you have it? Are you to a point where you might not? Yeah. Okay.
I don't interview every candidate. No.
You say that pretty matter of factly, but that's like a pretty significant deal to get to the point where you have an organization of people that you trust.
Yeah.
That you've built this culture, which I think we could, I think you have amazing superpowers that you're very humble about, but in terms of just like your ability to lead and treat people the right way, and how that can transcend into what we're talking about right now, in terms of like, they know who fits on this team and fits into this culture that you've spent many, many years building.
It took a while to get there, because I did interview everyone personally, and I think that was important early on, right? So that we could, and I didn't realize it, right? But that first team, and we've been, I don't know if it's lucky is the right word, right? But we hired well, and so we've got folks that have been with us for 3+ years now, since we early 2019. We set a strong foundation in place, at least with our first 2 studios, right? Those folks that were involved there are involved in the hiring process now. And, we've definitely made bad hires through the years, right? And we all sort of, take accountability for those bad hires. And we, as long as we learn from it, right? And hey, we know that's not a good hire, right? Either, we knew it beforehand, but we forced it, or there, maybe we didn't see the signs, but here's the signs that were there, right? As long as we learn from that, we'll continue to do fine in the hiring piece. But from a scale perspective, it's just not feasible for me to with everything else that we've got to do to continue to grow. And that's what we want to do is to grow the business. I've got to delegate that to our managers, because they're they're going to be with them on a daily basis. That's going to be more impactful for that individual that we're hiring and the manager. They create that relationship early on. Right. I'm not as important when it comes down to those specifics.
Yeah. You've empowered in a very good way to people that you trust. Yeah. That, not everything's gonna be perfect, like you said, but that mindset that you just had, like, hey, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Within a certain box. Right. But as long as we paid to get the lesson out of that mistake, it's a good investment. Maybe it costs some money or whatever, but it's worth more than an investment versus what you can take out of it versus, looking at it like dollars and cents kind of thing.
That's right.
So as you continue to grow and scale your business, what has your role, like, what are you focused on right now as the business continues to grow?
Yeah. So when we're building out a studio, that's my primary role. I handle, if it's working with real estate and working through the lease and through the construction, I still handle all of that, or Stacey and I do. And I leave kind of my management to maintain the day-to-day of the existing studios. And what we've said from the start, and I hope I plan to stick to as we go through it, I don't ever want to open a studio to the detriment of one or others that are existing, right? And so that's why I want to, as long as I can manage that build out and the opening of one and leave, so as of right now, those 4 existing to continue to run and operate and stay, let them continue to do their job, then that's good. So my role is building out studios. And then, it's, once, when I get into a place, like, for example, right now, so I just opened a 4th studio. Now it is, okay, let's get everybody, let's make sure that 4th studio comes up the curve as quickly as possible. And, bring that one into the fold as well. We've done that. We do that, as it's working, and we hire early managers so that they're a part of the process from a pre-sale perspective. And so they're working with our other managers early on, even before the studio's open. But after it's open, it's to get everybody, to continue to raise the bar across those existing studios, and and then to look, okay, so where do we go next, right? Where's the next best location for us to go? So that's how we do it. From a day-to-day basis, it is, I have regular connects with our managers. I think that's important, right? So that's, it's a bi-weekly set on the calendar routine. Individually, we've got weekly team meetings from a management perspective. Our studios all have in-person staff meetings on a monthly basis. So, my role there is making sure that all is happening, right? I lead a lot of those in terms of just making sure that we're all connected and talking and learning from each other. I'm setting the sales goals on a monthly basis. So I still kind of have that higher level view across the whole portfolio.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So there's, you mentioned a couple of times the word pre-sales. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that and how that pans. Because I think there's also maybe a little bit of a story we could take a deep dive into with your first studio, because I think there was some not hard lessons, but call it unexpected things that you had to go through to get your first studio open. But yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about the pre-sales and kind of what they are and why they are a rather significant part of opening a new studio.
Yeah. So pre-sale is sales pre-opening, for at least in StretchLab nomenclature. And we want to do that anywhere from, a couple months to, a few months to maybe 8 weeks prior to planned opening. And that's really to drive sales. It's to drive memberships of the studio before you actually open your doors, right? So from a business owner perspective, it's early revenue, and it's knowing that, okay, once my studio opens, I have X number of paying members right out of the gates, right? Which is great. And I can do that. I say a StretchLab owner can do that pretty simply through what we call pop-ups. And I think we've all seen them out there, in different shopping centers and malls. And it's not necessarily StretchLab, but, vendors that are out there, they've got a table set up. For me, I can bring a portable bench, like a portable massage table, and a flexologist and a manager, and I can offer free stretches for 15 minutes to folks. And then they get a free stretch. As long as we've done a good job, they feel really good. And then they can buy a membership, and that's the founding member rate, right? It's a discounted rate. They maintain it for the lifetime of their membership. As long as they're a customer in good standing, they maintain that price point, and it's never going to be that cheap again, right? And so that's the kind of the sales pitch for that from a customer perspective on why I would do it. And then my job is to build that pipeline as much as I can. So I'll start my digital marketing, and identifying those qualified leads 3-4 months ahead of time, right? And people start, clicking buttons on Facebook, Instagram, submitting information. Then, we've got a lead management follow-up process, right? So then now I've got, before we opened our most recent studio, had, north of 1,000 leads of folks that had raised their hands, said they were interested, right? And so then once we started doing pop-ups, it's reaching out to all those folks. Hey, we're getting closer, come get a free stretch. Come get a free stretch today, tomorrow, next Thursday, we're at this location. Next weekend, we're at that location. And my goal at every one of those pop-ups is as best we can to have if I'm there for 3 hours, maybe 3 hours with one flexologist is, 12 to 15 stretches, right? Have all those booked up already, right? And so while I've got, everybody that shows up and getting a stretch is essentially a qualified lead for me. Right. So that's what that pre-sale process looks like. And so you mentioned, so our first studio, we started that work literally, I think my first pop-up was January 3rd of 2019. And at that point in time, I thought I was going to have a studio open by March. So I thought, okay, I've got about a 2-month runway here. I'm going to build this thing out. So we start doing pop-ups, and we were hot and heavy on it, doing them, 4 to 5 a week. Obviously we'd had to hire staff and have flexologists ready to go and do that. And we did that through the month of November and December. But, what I thought was a March opening literally turned out to be a late May, 1st of June opening, right? So now I'm delayed by, 2-3 months. And, I'd told a lot of people I'm going to be open in March, right? Then I made the mistake of telling a lot of people that I'm going to be open in April, right? And I kept making that mistake and finally learned, number one, I can't commit to timing because this was new construction, right? So we did an okay job of communicating and realizing, okay, let's be honest and open and communicate the situation without getting too much in the weeds of why we're delayed, but hey, we're delayed and we're not going to be open. Hey, come back and another free stretch at this pop-up, right? And letting those folks know that had already purchased, right? That we're expecting to be a paying customer a lot sooner. Well, sorry, I don't have a studio for you to come to yet, but yeah, come over to, X retail location and get another free stretch while you're patiently waiting. So, we've learned from that, don't overcommit on timing, right? Because nothing goes exactly as planned. If it's a construction thing, if it's a permit thing, there's always some hurdles along the way, but we've gotten better at it at least.
Yeah. And I bet like when you're in the heat of the battle, especially your first location, that 2 to 3 months of May, June, July, or April, May, and June, that probably felt like more like 9 months.
It was brutal. It was brutal. Yeah.
First one.
Every week we were expecting better news, and it's just, it felt like it took forever. And people told us, and they said, hey, you'll look back on this, and laugh. And I don't know necessarily if I laugh at it, right? But look back on it and say, okay, it wasn't as big of a deal as it felt like at the time, right? But I think, when you're learning, you're opening a business, right? Time is of the essence, right? And so it was right for, I don't have any issue with us being as stressed as we were on, hey, we want to get out there and, still got bills to pay, right? When it comes down to, other vendors I've signed on and, I've
employees,
right? That I want to, either I need to pay and or expect to be making more money because they thought that we were going to be open sooner. So yeah, there's all sorts of implications for those delays.
Yeah. And I think what you said, like you chose to almost embrace it and just be, hey, here's the situation and we're doing the best we can. And I remember getting the emails because I was on your list and it was perfect. It was very personable. You could feel it, in terms of,
that's
who
what
you guys were.
We wanted folks to know that, we were making these hard decisions and it was coming directly from, Stacey, myself, and putting our name on it. And I think that helped us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's kind of the part of the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like you're striving to build something that in the future is the vision, right? But the months and the years even to, to get to that point, like it's a journey, and some months it's a battle, right? And then other months and weeks, it's the best thing in the world. And it's the only thing, the only feeling you can get is by having your own business, for the good times. So you guys have done a good job, but it was, in a way, I don't want to say worth it, but there was a culminating effect when you guys opened your first studio, right? Like it was, you opened in a pretty big way.
Yeah, we opened in a big way. North of 250, paying members right out of the gates, which at that point in time was a record for our franchise system. I don't know if we still have it, but we had a lot of activity walking through the door on day one and continue to do so. There was a lot of buzz around it. Which was, super exhilarating and exciting. And, it was and so much fun.
You guys pick, and you have a magic touch with picking the right locations.
I think it's really important especially for a new brand, right? That we put ourselves in the right locations, right? This is all that I have experience with, but people aren't out necessarily looking for a StretchLab. Right. Now they'll find us maybe through, some online channels and some of my digital marketing. But if I'm tucked away and hidden, even if they are kind of looking for us, if it's not easy to get to, it's not a good fit. But we get a lot of business just by being where eyes are. Right. Yeah. In our franchisor, they're from a real estate perspective, they're very clear, anchored locations, go into, we've learned that, and I'm a huge believer in that, so when I work with my broker, right, it's okay, where's the next best location, right? That doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be in this city or that city, right? It's where's the next best one that we can get into. Yeah.
And Lindsay, your broker, she's a pit bull, man, in a good way. She just helped my neighbor get sign a lease for his organic mattress store over in in the Barnes and Noble shopping center right behind the South Park Mall.
Sweet. That's a great spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
she's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So going into you have a keen sense the franchisor helps, but also having a really good broker is a big advantage in the real estate thing. So I think like all these things are really cool with like the pre-sales and picking the right locations and obviously your ability to hire and lead a team of people to carry on. But one of the coolest things is like just how many different types of people and how many lives you can touch through stretching. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's like, I would love to talk a little bit about just some cool stories that you've seen of people and customers who have come in and you've helped them in some form or fashion through, something so simple as stretching. But it's not like stretching's new. It's been around forever. And for some people, it has a life-changing effect on them personally.
Does. Yeah. I mean, I'll sort of go through the memory banks to find some good stories. But at a high level, we've got customers that are, as young as under 10, right, into their 90s. And so we've had the full spectrum, right, of kind of the world we live in, of folks. And that's really the youngest ones, at least for us, have been young athletes, where their parents frankly see, okay, hey, the parents have a vision for their kid, and the kid's obviously showing promise, right? But hey, for them to continue to grow and to be at top of their game, this is something that's important for them. And so that's typically the youngest. We're not medically aligned, right? And so we, folks, we're not seeing, at least from a kid's perspective, kids that need sort of PT for, medical issues that they may have, right? That's not our fit. So it's more of the younger athletes. And then on the older side, it's folks that just want to continue. They want to keep living, right? They want to keep moving. And I think it's good for our business, over the last decade, maybe even less than that, right? This focus on movement and wellness and moving well is, a lot of people are hearing about it and reading about it, right? It's a pretty hot topic that's out there. And that's exactly what we're here to do, right? Is to help people, be flexible and mobile so that they can move well and do the things that they want to do, right? Our tagline is every studio in the back says live long, right? So you can take that as, hey, do this to live a long, full life. It could be to stand tall, right? And have that long spine, right? And improve that posture. But that's exactly what we stand for. And so for the older demographics, people just want to keep doing what they're enjoying, right? And that could be golf, tennis. Obviously, those are sweet spots for us. Or it's walking their dog, playing with grandkids, continuing to compete in master swimming, whatever it might be at the older age as well, we're a good fit for. In terms of specific stories, I mean, we've had, let's see, we have some on the younger athlete side, some kids that have worked with us through their high school years, have been able to stay healthy when they were going down a path that they were starting to have some overuse, that have, they were doing other things, right? I would never take credit for, being the reason that somebody, but in the end, kids that got scholarships, right, to really live out their dream, right? And they were able to do that, continuing to feel well in their sport. We have had stroke patients and folks like that. Now, while we're not medically aligned, right, everybody, they had been passed, that you just need to, you as a patient, right, you've gone through everything you need to medically and you're recovered from the stroke, but you're still feeling it. You need to continue to move, right? And you got to do everything you can to keep your body moving in the right direction. And stretching is a helpful thing for stroke patients. So we've had quite a few stroke patients that we've worked with. And we do, back to our hiring and staffing, we have more than a few what we call PTAs, physical therapy assistants on our team. These past roles were PTAs, right? So they bring that knowledge to the table, right? So if I know I have somebody that's recovering from a stroke, they're 100% cleared to be with us, I want to put them with the PTA, because that PTA knows they've got education on what that stroke patient is dealing with. So they become a great fit. And that's a lot of the things what we really want to do is align because each flexologist is unique in their experience and their history and what they enjoy. If I can align that to the clients, and really, and now it's up to my managers to do that intake and assessment and determine who's the best fit. If we do a good job there, it sings, right? Because from the young athlete, I mean, we have some great folks on our team that just love working with young athletes, right? They train young athletes as their side gig and their side hustle. We make those connections. It's a win-win. So, yeah, I don't know if hopefully that helped on the sort of the success story, but a lot, every time I'm in a studio and I'll talk to somebody and they realize, okay, we're the owner, invariably, oh man, I feel so much better now. If it's I dropped 3 strokes off my handicap, right? Or, my tennis game has gotten that much better, or, hey, I can, my serve, I'm a tennis player. So, I've got more mobility on my shoulder now I thought I'd never be able to serve again, or, I wouldn't have range of motion after surgery, a few years ago, and I've got it back. So lots of cool stories like that.
Yeah. There's so many different lives you can touch in so many different ways through I don't want to through a pretty simple idea of, stretching, right? Of just helping people activate parts of their body in ways that we don't, especially as we get older, right? Like we're not as active as we are as we're growing up, but the
idea have somebody that knows what they're doing, right? Because there's a right way and a wrong way to stretch. Yep. There's static and dynamic, and when do you do one or the other? And for us, from a static stretching perspective, which is what we essentially do in studio, there's a right way to do it, right? And there's some scientifically proven ways to immediately impact flexibility and mobility. And that's really what we're training and teaching. That's our proprietary training process, is to teach that, and how do you apply that to a 50-minute stretch with the regular cadence. So we essentially program that for every client, and it works. But that's the cool thing. It's nothing new. And everybody says, "Oh, I know I should stretch more," but we don't take the time to do it.
Right.
So that's what we're here to do.
And you can't get anywhere near the depth of a stretch by yourself, on your own, even with the Theragun and all that stuff, compared to what a flexologist can deliver to your body and your muscles.
That's right.
Yeah, man. Cool. So what's next? Like, what's the next big thing that you're chasing? I always come back to, we really love the product, and for us, I think it's finding the right markets to continue to go into. Where's going to be a good fit for StretchLab? Now, clearly the Corp Exponential's done a great job of marketing StretchLab and selling the heck out of some licenses and territories across the country. So for me, it's okay, what else is out there and available? What makes sense for us, personally to continue to do? And it's important for me to continue to challenge our team, right? I got to continue to give opportunity to our team, give them more responsibility, to keep them engaged, keep them learning. If I can do that, then I'm going to minimize my attrition risk there. And it's a people business, right? And so keeping those folks, letting them know, hey, I've got a vision on the future, and there's more to come. Here's the things that I want to do for them, right? And following up on my word. So for example, I told them early 2021, my goal is to put a retirement plan in place for us. Well, in November of last year, rolled out a 401k, right? For our team, right? So it's things like that, you kind of follow it up with action, put the word out there, put the vision out there so they can see it, and then follow it up. So that's, I want to continue to continue to grow the business so that we've got more opportunity like that for folks. Well, I have no doubt you will figure out what that growth looks like in the next few years, my friend.
Yeah, man, we're excited for it, for sure.
Yeah. So if anybody's listening that's in the Charlotte, Fort Mill, Huntersville, Mooresville area, what's the best way to get in touch with you in your studios?
Yeah.
You want to come check it out?
Steve.Hitzemann@stretchlab.com. You have like show notes or something like that for these things, right? Yeah. But folks can shoot me an email, and happy to chat if it's a prospective client, or if it's you're looking into franchising. Can't say enough good things about you, Dru, and kind of your guidance to me along as I was going through that sort of validation process early on before deciding to do this. But then, other than enjoying hanging out with you, at a personal level, right? I'm always learning stuff from you, and you're open with information about what's going on within franchising, or from a local perspective, what's happening in the markets here. So, you're a wealth of info, and it's hugely beneficial to me as we're sort of navigating these waters.
I appreciate that. And the feeling's mutual. I enjoy every minute getting to talk to you and hanging out with you, and look forward to when Carmel gets some golf carts back and we can go out there.
You weren't there the couple of days prior, were you? I hope.
No, it wasn't me.
You had a big
Steve's golf course.
in a golf cart.
There was a fire in their golf cart barn, and they're now using rental gas. I was playing with a guy who was at Carmel, so he was filling me in a little bit on what's going on. But that's where Steve and I do most of our talking, is on the golf course. So.
Right.
So yeah, man, we'll look forward to getting out there again. And I've enjoyed, thank you for coming on and really enjoyed it, my friend.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, good stuff. That's a wrap. Hope you found a nugget or two in there that can help you on your franchise journey. And if you ever want to talk franchising, reach out to me anytime.